We're back on Better Than Before. I'm Tony Richards, and I want to talk to you a little bit about a book that I just finished. It's the fourth in a series by an author, and his name is Steven Pressfield. And Steven Pressfield has written a lot of nonfiction. He's written a lot of fiction. Most famously, the writer of the book and movie The Legend of Bagger Vance, starring Will Smith. If you've seen that movie, that was written by Steven Pressfield. He's written a lot of books for people who believe they have an artistry and a creative bent to themselves. His first book that he wrote was called The War of Art. And the thing that really struck me about the War of Art is this idea that there is a resistance that exists that is trying to keep you from being your best self. When you feel that you have something to offer creatively, and I believe that this applies to every person. So if you're an executive, it's going to try to prevent you from being the best executive. If you're a writer, it's going to try to keep you from writing words on the page. Resistance is going to get in your way, and it's going to try to keep you from being the best, fill in the blank, that there is. And, you know, one thing that I've observed, and I don't know that Steven really articulates this in The War of Art, but one thing I've observed, resistance customizes itself to the person that it's being resistant to. So in other words, the resistance that I face every day in trying to be the best Tony Richards I can be is customized to Tony Richards. My fears and feelings and constraints are mine and mine alone. And they are very, very effective at trying to keep me from doing the things I know I need to do in order to be what I really want to be. That is the central idea around the War of Art. And then he continues that idea in another book called Do the Work. He takes the theme of the difference between an amateur and a professional. A lot of people are doing things that they have to do, they feel, to make a living, and that's their amateur situation, versus if they were doing it as a professional and they were making a living at it. For instance, a fellow might be a dentist, let's say, and I'm just pulling these things out of the air, right? I'm not referring to anybody specific. A fellow might be a dentist, and he is using that dentist occupation to feed his family and to provide for his family and all that. But what he really, really enjoys and loves is cars. So on the weekends, he goes to car shows and he goes to work on his antique car or car restoration or whatever it is around cars that he really enjoys doing. And that's really the thing that he needs to be doing as a profession, because that's where his passion lies. But for whatever reason, resistance has convinced him that he has to stay over here in this other thing in order to provide for himself and his family. So that is the theme of the book Turning Pro, which is the third book kind of in that artistry series. Well, the fourth book, which just came out like 6-8 weeks ago, that I have thoroughly enjoyed reading, called The Artist's Journey. And the artist's journey is about the process of once you decide that you're going to go down a particular path, and that you're going to start fighting resistance, which is against you and is going to try to prevent you from being the best, fill in the blank, that you can be. There is a journey involved in doing that. And so in the artist's journey, Steven Pressfield explores that entire idea. Here's a piece of the book called Dark Night of the Soul, and this is the very first thing he writes in the book. He says, at least once a day, sometimes 3 or 4, someone sends me an email describing with excruciating vividness their losing struggle with their own resistance. Many of these letters are heartbreaking. They plead for help. How, they ask, can I stop drinking? How can I stop doing drugs? How can I stop having self-destructing habits? How can I stop neglecting my children? How can I stop mistreating my spouse? How can I stop doing these things and start doing my best work or my soul's desire? How can I keep up my will to fight? In Hollywood terms, we would say of these people that they're in their all is lost moment. They are at the point in their hero's journey where they are as far from their objective as possible. They are torn between their daemon, the inherent spirit summoning to live out their higher destiny, and the very real demands and fears of the material world in which they and their families dwell. And then he kind of goes into his own all is lost moment. You kind of get the idea of what he's trying to describe to you because he talks about what he went through. He says, I'm 24 years old, married, and working as an advertising writer in New York City at an agency called Benton and Bowles, stuck in the boring world. I've got a boss named Ed Hannibal. He quits and writes a novel. It's a huge success, and I think, hell, why don't I do that? That was the call. I do quit. I've got a wife I love. She supports me, and I start writing. I'm trying to write a novel. I have no idea what a novel is or what writing is, and I certainly have no idea what resistance is. And the villain appears. Short version is, I get 99.9% of the way through and I freak out. I blow up the book and my marriage. Even shorter version, I wind up on the American road in my 65 Chevy van. Act 2, the upside down world. I cross the U.S. 13 times working all the jobs a screwed up writer works. I teach school, I pick fruit, I drive trucks, I work on offshore oil rigs. Archetypes appear. I meet and become friends with older mentors, helpful and non-helpful women, even spirit animals. The ordeal deepens. I'm fighting my own cowardice and running away from writing, plus my guilt over hurting my wife, disgracing my family, and etc. In total defeat, I crawl back to New York City and find work driving a cab. What's left for me? I can't go back out on the road, and I can't find my way forward. I have now hit my all is lost moment. And then he goes on and says, then what follows is the epiphany moment. In Hollywood parlance, the all is lost moment is often succeeded, often immediately, by the epiphanal moment. In this moment, the hero experiences a breakthrough. The breakthrough is almost always internal. The hero changes their attitude. They regroup. They see their dilemma from a new perspective, one that they had never considered before, or if they had considered it, would reject. A point of view that offers either hope or desperation amounting to hope. The narrative now enters Act 3. The hero, fortified by this fresh hope or desperation, charges full tilt into the climax. This is where Sarah Connor stops running and turns to confront the Terminator. Luke Skywalker boards his X-Wing and flies against the Death Star. Bogey makes the decision to put Ingrid with her husband Paul on the plane to Lisbon, while he himself stays to confront the enemies of freedom. Here is my epiphanal moment as described in The War of Art. And then he goes into what he's already written in The War of Art. And he says, my hero's journey is now ended and my artist's journey is now beginning. The point is, when you finally confront the thing that you know internally that you should always have been doing, there's going to be resistance. And the rest of the journey that you take from that point forward, once you commit to doing what you were born to do, then the artist's journey and the resistance is going to really begin and get intense, as he described there in 3 really powerful ways, like it happens in the movies. Movies are just reflection of real life stuff. If you go back and look at your life in chapters, what I will often do with a coaching client is I will actually have them write their life. And the way I'll have them do it is I'll say, okay, chapter 1 is age 1 to 10. I want you to describe to me what your life was like growing up from age 1 to age 10. Chapter 2 is age 11 to age 20. Tell me what happened in your life and hit the high points of age 11 to 20. Chapter 3 is age 21 to age 30. What's interesting is how the story of all those clients weave throughout those particular decades and how they all begin to look interestingly common and similar around 25 or 30 to 40 to 45 when they find this particular calling that they want to do, and they veer off and do the thing that they feel like they were always supposed to be doing, which then brings a bunch of different challenges to it. I'd highly recommend this series of books, and if you are thinking about starting this from scratch, I would start with The War of Art. If you want to just dive into some of Steven's work and get a feel for it, this latest book is called The Artist's Journey. I just really, really enjoy it. I think it's really, really great. It certainly speaks to my heart and my soul, especially if you write at all. It's going to speak directly to you. But anybody who is trying to craft a life out of a calling that you think you have, to be a very high level, dedicated professional, this is going to speak to you really, really well. And one of the things that's interesting in the book that I really enjoyed was he takes a couple of artists' works. So he'll take the Rolling Stones, for example. He'll take their first 3 albums, and then he talks about their next 3 albums, then their next 3. And you can see around album 6 or 7 how then they become the Rolling Stones we've always known and loved, and what we think of when we think of the Rolling Stones. Those first 3 albums are fairly obscure, but think of all the people who never get to make 1 or 2 albums, so they never get to go on that journey that takes a little bit to craft. It took the Eagles a few albums to get to Hotel California. The second album that the Eagles put out was trashed by the record executives. They said, "Oh my God, what have you done?" It took a couple albums for them to find their signature sound and get to that place. And I think that's pretty common with most people. It takes a little bit. Let me share a couple more things from the book for you. This is called The Artist's Journey is Internal. This speaks to me. Let's see if it does anything for you. He says, "I used to write at a desk that faced a wall. And my friends would ask, 'Why don't you turn the desk around so you have a view to the outside?' I don't care about the view outside. My focus is inside. The book or movie I'm writing is playing inside my head. Dalton Trumbo wrote in the bathtub. Marcel Proust never got out of bed. Why should they? The journey they were on was inside themselves." This is called The Artist's Journey is Personal. The novels of Philip Roth are completely different from those of Jonathan Franzen. Neither author, gifted as he may be, can do what the other does. In fact, neither can write anything except what his own gift authorizes, that which is unique to him alone. And I would say that executives and CEOs and business owners are that way. And I think that is what the big danger is in copying and emulating somebody else, because you're trying to take something that they are expressing from inside themselves and claim that as your own. And you're trying to copy and emulate that when you should be following what's inside you. I can say that is why I've never really gravitated toward selling somebody else's product. I've never been part of anybody else's network. I've never wanted to teach anybody else's curriculum, which comes out of a book that somebody else has written. I don't want to teach what comes out of somebody else. I want to teach what comes out of me. That's something that's just really, really important to me. I want the things that I produce to be authentically me and to come from inside me. This is called The Artist's Journey is Universal. Millions of people can read Philip Roth and Jonathan Franzen and be touched and moved and illuminated. What is personal to the artist is universal to the rest of us. And this final one that I can definitely attest to, the artist's journey is solitary. Yes, artists collaborate. And yes, there's such a thing as the writer's room. But the work of the artist takes place not on the page or in conversation or debate, but inside their head. You, the artist, are alone in that space. There is no one in there but you. I'll tell you, sometimes you sit down and nothing comes out. You have to wait on that sometimes, but what's coming out is going to come from you. And so you have to wait. Other times, it's like turning on a fire hydrant. I mean, you sit down and it just flows out of you. And I think you get caught up in resistance. There's some weeks I don't want to sit down and write. And I have to find a way to fight through the resistance and sit down and write. That's what limits a lot of people and keeps a lot of people back, is the resistance is customized for you. Whatever your weak spot is, whatever your tender point is, whatever is going to hold you back, your resistance is customized and designed especially to do that. And you have to learn to identify it, you have to learn to recognize it, and you have to learn how to deal with it, or else resistance will conquer you. If you get a chance, get The Artist's Journey by Steven Pressfield. I think you'll enjoy it.
Receive weekly coaching tips from Tony Richards, delivered straight to your inbox. Whether you're a CEO or an entrepreneur, Tony can help you reach your goals and give you a competitive edge within your industry. Tony's Monday Morning Coaching Memo covers topics ranging from leadership development to teamwork to company culture and more. Text the word leadership to 38470 to sign up for Tony's Monday Morning Coaching Memo, or sign up online at clearvisiondevelopment.com.